Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Muslim Sex Podcast. I have some exciting news. I want to let all of you know that I am opening up my office, my private office, where I can see you here in New York, and it will be opening at the end of this month. So this month is now June. So at the end of this month, my office will be up and running, and I would love for you to come in and see me as a patient. So go to V Health, so that is FEMMEVIEHEALTH.com, and sign up to be a member of my concierge gynecology practice. And you can also come to see me for regular visits, or if you have a problem visit, come and see me. I, of course, focus on menopause and sexual health. So if you're having any of those issues, I'd love to see you. And make sure you come in and say hi. I'd love to meet you in person. So also, the retreat is still going on. It'll be happening September 16th through the 23rd, and we only have a few spots left. So if you were thinking about coming to the retreat where we focus on nutrition and sexual health and menopausal health, you need to register today because spots are filling up. And once it's sold out, it will be sold out and we will not be taking any more participants. So make sure you go and register for that as well. Also, as always, please remember to like and share this podcast. Leave me a 5-star review so that it shows up and so that we can get the word out about menopausal and sexual health, as well as intimacy and intimacy coaching. So if you love this podcast, please make sure to leave me a 5-star review. And now on to the episode. I am an American board certified OBGYN, a mom, a Muslim, and I'm talking about sex. This is the Muslim Sex Podcast. Welcome to the Muslim Sex Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sadaf, and this episode is everything you need to know about marriage coaching and relationship coaching. And on with me today is Dr. Adebo. But before we get into the episode, a few things that I always make very clear. One is that I'm not giving any type of medical advice. So if you have any questions about your health, please speak with your friendly neighborhood health provider. And if you have any questions about your religion, please speak with your friendly neighborhood religious leader. This is the Muslim Sex Podcast because I just happen to be a Muslim woman that talks about sex. So on with me today, I'm very happy to welcome Dr. Adebo. And Dr. Adebo, if you could please introduce yourself to all the viewers and listeners out there.
Yes, thank you for having me, Doc. My name is Senait Adebo. I'm a pediatrician. I have been seeing pediatric patients, for over a decade now, and I have been seeing the challenges. Health is wellness in body, mind, spirit, and sometimes I see physical illness, but the underlying problem is more emotional or spiritual. And so I was interested in coaching some more. And so I did additional coaching training. And so I'm a certified life coach. Right now, I own my own practice, Sugarland Pediatrics, in the Houston area. And I do coach within my practice. I coach my patients. I coach their families in parenting, marriage, relationship, being healthy. Health is being well in body, mind, spirit. It's not only the absence of illness, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's fantastic. So I'd love to hear from your experience and from your coaching, what type of things clients will come to you for in regard to relationship coaching or, say, marriage coaching. What do they usually come to you?
Right. So the most common thing I see in my practice is one, parents struggling, relationship with parenting and either having different parenting styles, right? Mom and dad have different parenting styles, and that creates a tension in their relationship, in their marriage. And so that's one common problem. Other problems that I see are just general arguments between mom and dad. And I am so committed to create a healthy, peaceful environment, home environment for the children that I treat so they thrive well in body, mind, spirits. And so I coach parents who are having struggle in their marriages or in the parenting.
Okay, great. So I can really, I mean, I can imagine lots of parents have, different coaching styles. You see that a lot of times. I know even in my own house with my family, I'm definitely the more stricter parent, and my husband is, a little bit more laid back and relaxed and things like that. So I can definitely see how that would cause some tension, especially, we know kids will be kids. And so they will always try to go to the parent that they know will say yes, as opposed to the parent that they think might say no. And they will always say, well, mom said this, but, and then whatever. So I can see how that would be a problem. How does that play out for most of your clients? Is that what you
Yes.
see? You see? Yes.
Yeah, so I the same thing. I would see one parent who's laid back and may not set limits, and that the other parent is more stricter and want to set limits, right? So our children do need a balance of both. They do need our love, our attention, but we also do need to set limits, right? And what I have found out is that mom and dad need to be on the same page, right? Divided parents are a recipe for more struggle in their parenting, in their marriages. The children may use their division for their benefits, right? And so it's common to have different parenting styles, right? We all are not going to have one, but talk about your differences outside. When you have dating nights, for example, when it's just you guys, you can discuss, you can come up with a plan, not in front of your children. You don't want to be arguing and things in front of your children. You don't want to show your differences as much as possible in front of your children, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think that, when, I've seen that when parents argue or if they're upset, definitely the kids pick up on it. And there's definitely tension in the home. And then I think that the kids start to get really stressed out too, right? Because they will see that the parents aren't talking, or if they're upset or something like that, then the kids also, even though they may not say it, even like little kids, right? They still feel it. And so then they may act out, or they may, not listen, or they may start to take a side or something like that. And I think I can definitely see how that would cause even more problems in the house, right? And then, especially if there's like marital problems in that relationship, having one, having children pit one adult against the other, or the adults doing that, right? Taking a child and having the children pick sides, which I think
Exactly.
can happen sometimes in like a divorce situation, which I think
Yes.
makes it very difficult for kids.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, our children do feel our energy, how you're feeling. I've heard one of the experts say children are like violin. They play the emotion of their parents, right? So whatever tension, emotion, drama may be going on between mom and dad, it does directly or indirectly affect the children. And so that's why as a pediatrician, I went ahead and studied coaching, and so I can support families even more, right, at a higher level. And help families create a peaceful, loving environment where children can thrive and grow to be their full, to achieve their full potential in body, mind, spirit. And so, yes, that's very, very important that um, mom and dad work their differences, um, and that not bring up tension, or make the children in the middle of their differences, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can definitely see how that would cause a lot of problems. And I guess it definitely makes sense that you would do coaching where you're trying to help the parents out, because if you help out the parents, then essentially you're helping out the kids, right? Because the kids are being taken care of by the parents. And if the parents are always arguing or, have a lot of tension in the home, it definitely, I'm sure, plays out in the children. And I'm sure it would make it very difficult.
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes it shows up as an illness in the child,
Mm. Mhm.
but it's not really physical illness, it's all emotional. And you brought up divorce, especially the divorce rate in this country. It's just going so exponentially, increasing so exponentially that it makes me really, really sad. If parents did work out, married couples, if they worked out their differences, we wouldn't see this high divorce rate, if that makes sense. And so in my coaching, I teach married couples to um, make the problem in most relationship, what I see is that we only see our part, right, our perspective. We don't see the other person's perspective, right? And we are always justified and we are always right because we see only our we are in our head. Right, we see our part only, and then we think the other person should do this and that, or we have lists, and we kind of expect everybody will think and act like us, but that's really not the reality, right? um, our differences is actually our beauty. And the what I see commonly in marriage is that different personality characters attract each other, right? So most of the time you're going to be attracted to a partner who has a different character or a different trait, strengths and weaknesses than you. And so that can be an asset. It can also be a liability, right? And so I help parents make this as an asset, right? See it from the other perspective, and not use it as a liability, not use it to argue or to create problems.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's fantastic. So maybe you can tell us a little bit of, you said you usually see parents come in for relationship issues. So what are some of techniques that you give to clients or patients to help deal with, their differences, right? Like you said, a lot of times opposites do attract, but then as years go down, they go down the line, they find that sometimes those differences can become more exaggerated, right? And so
Mhm.
then instead of really bringing them together, you see that it's causing more and more of a separation. So, what techniques or suggestions do you provide couples that may be, having a real difficult time seeing eye to eye? What are some tips that you give them?
Right. No, that's a very good question. One of the main um, tool I give them is being able to bring difficult conversations
Mhm.
comfortably.
Mm.
So what I see usually is if there is kind of difference, if it's going to cause argument or anything, we tend to run away from them, right? Um, each each couple may be different. Like one of the partner may like to shut down when there is an argument and not talk about things. The other one may chase and try to solve the issue. And so you kind of can see a dance, right? So when one is shutting down and not wanting to talk, the other one is trying to talk. And it kind of creates a dance of, someone retreating, the other one chasing. That's one pattern I see. And so, one thing we can do if there is a dynamic like that, allowing the person who wants to shut down, give them some space, if they do need space, and then bring it up not to be right, not to be correct, right? That's the other human condition. We always want to be right. We want to make the other person wrong. And so the goal is not to be right, to be correct, right? The goal is harmony, to bring unity, right? And so, and then if the person needs space, give them space, and you kind of know their personality type too. Especially if you live longer, you kind of can study what ticks them, right? What makes them mad or anything, and then you can work with them, and not giving meaning to the arguments, such as, okay, I'm in a wrong relationship, or this is not meant to be mine, or I'm married to the wrong person, or anything like that. Your mind is always going to give you answers, right? But don't give it meaning. It can be solved. The other big problem that married couples may have issues, and why it's hard to solve it, is that emotions get involved, right?
Mm.
And so when we are triggered, when we are emotional, we kind of lose access to our prefrontal cortex, the rational part of our brain. And so the emotional part of our brain kind of hijacks and takes over. And so if emotions are high, that's not a time to discuss, that's not a time to talk. Let emotions settle, and bring it up, talk about it later. Sometimes you may have fights, and you can have a good fight. Does that
Mm.
make sense? It's through
What's a
fight
good
and through your differences that you kind of solve your issues and your differences, so that next time, you have a smoother life and smoother communication. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I think that, a lot of times when people do argue or when couples argue, I think they do make uh, a lot, they change the meaning of what that discussion or that argument was about. I agree with you. I think that, sometimes those thoughts will come. So it's always, the brain, I find, always goes to the negative, right? Because the negative is almost like the default for us. So, if you have if you're arguing with your partner, or they're not talking to you, whatever, exactly those thoughts are, that maybe this is not meant to be, maybe this relationship was wrong, I was wrong to work at it, maybe it's not worth it, all those things, right? And I think that if we allow our minds to just go crazy, and take that thought all the way to the end, it's going to definitely end up in divorce. I think that it takes a lot of work to discipline your mind so that it's not always going toward the negative, but that you give the other person grace, you give them some time, you give them space that they need, so that when you're able to, when they've calmed down or when you've calmed down, then you can actually have a normal discussion and actually use the prefrontal cortex, right? Like you're saying, to actually use your logical brain and to come up with a solution, as opposed to letting your emotions, and both of your emotions, go crazy. And of course, we know that when emotions take over, especially the negative emotions, that it never really ends well.
For sure, absolutely, absolutely. And I like how you brought up how our mind goes to negativity. It's easier for mind to think negative thoughts
Yeah.
because we are hardwired. I say this all the time. We are hardwired for survival, right? Our ancestors had to think negative thoughts to stay safe, right? So when our ancestors were in the jungle, long time ago, they better be negative, right? Instead of thinking, oh, the shadow behind this tree is a lion. They better think the worst case scenario than think, oh, it's okay, it's just nothing. That's they had to think that to survive. And so we are hardwired for survival. And so our mind is always going to go to negativity. He did this deliberately to hurt me, or she did this to hurt me. But that may not necessarily be. That may be that person walking in their own lane. And I see a lot of times conflicts come when we step on each other's toe unconsciously while we are just doing our thing. We are just walking our walk, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, I'm curious to find out then what are some suggestions that you gave? So, that you give your clients. So, communication definitely is one, right?
Yeah.
And to talk to your partner when they're not upset, when they're not angry. Do you have any other suggestions or tips that you would give to couples or parents that can't really seem to see eye to eye?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So the other suggestion is do not assume, do not trust what your mind is telling you. Have a conversation. You know,
Uh,
when you did this and this, it made me. This is what I train my patients when it comes to communication and communicating different difficult conversation. Use the I first pronoun, right? Do not say, you made me feel this. No, I felt this way when you did this and this and that. When you say this and that, I felt this way, right? So use I. It made me feel this way. And I just wanted to bring up to you next time, I would really appreciate it if you don't do that, whatever it is. For example, when you talk to me with that tone and that way, it made me feel, angry, sad, or right, whatever we felt. And then, but next time in this situation, I would appreciate it if you do this instead of that. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think that it's really important, right? Because when you use the word you did this and you did that, is you're accusing them, right?
Mm-hmm.
As
Mm-hmm.
opposed to really talking about how perhaps their actions made you feel, right? So really just putting it on yourself as opposed to accusing them, which I think really shifts the narrative a little bit, right? Because
Ex-
you want the other person to know how their actions are affecting you.
Exactly, exactly. Because
Yeah.
the other person is not in your body, they're not in your mind, they don't know how you felt, what you thought about the action. And so giving them this insight will help them see their blind spots, because we all have blind spots, right?
Yes.
We only see from narrow our side, our perspective, and we all do have that blind spot that we think we're doing right. We think we're doing the right thing, but may have been perceived a different way by our partner. This will be true in any relationship, not just marriage, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we I myself am an intimacy coach. So, the biggest factor that decides if a woman is satisfied in her relationship is communication. And that's the number one factor. And so I think that just kind of permeates through all of the different types of coaching, right?
Yeah.
I feel like you can't really ever over communicate. I
Hmm.
feel that, you really need to keep those lines of communication open because, like you said, the other person is not in your body, they're not in your mind, they have no idea what is going on. So, unless you tell them what's going on, they're not going to know. And if you stay silent, that's probably the worst thing you can do, right? Is to not talk and tell the other person what's bothering you because in the end, they're never going to know unless you tell them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very correct. Yes. Yes, that's so good. You summarized it in a very, very nice way. I totally agree, and that's the main problem, that we see over and over and over.
Yeah, is communication. Absolutely. So, of the people that you've coached, what has been the end result? Do they resolve their differences? Do they communicate better? Do they end up with a divorce because they just have these irreconcilable differences that they just can't see past. Have you had any follow up from your clients to know what happens?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, most of the patients I coached in their relationship, they are thriving really well. They have rekindled their love and connection, and they stopped fighting. And one family actually, specifically, they said, "What were we doing before?" It kind of seemed like stupid, sorry the word for the word, that they were doing that before they start working with me. So it changed everything for them. I coach a lot of parents too in their parenting too, and it's I am a strong believer in coaching because you are seeing your mind only, right? And so seeing the perspective, the whole picture from another mind is a great way of seeing where the issue is, how you can solve it. And so I highly do recommend, if any families struggling, in their marriage, get coaching. Not family therapy. So I have seen that family coaching, family counseling therapy, what in my experience, what I've seen is that everyone points to each other and they talk about the negativity, and it makes it even worse, right? But you want transformation. You want to focus on the solution, not the problem. um, I always talk about this even with my staff. We can have issues, we can have problem, and our tendency is to magnify the problem, right? Focus on the problem. That's our default tendency. But you want to see, what is the solution? What can I do to solve this?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. However, there definitely is, I think, room for therapy because I feel that as with coaching, I feel that coaching is all about moving your relationship forward, right? Whether it's your marriage, whether it's your relationship with your kids, any of those things. It's typically patients or clients, they feel stuck and they want to move forward in their relationship. I do feel like with therapy, though, therapy helps in the sense that if there's a lot of baggage there, right, or problems in the past that they need
Mm-hmm.
to unpack, I feel like
Mm-hmm.
then the therapy definitely has a role and they can help to unpack all of those things. But you're right. I mean, coaching is so different in the sense that it is about transformation. It is about really moving your relationship forward so that you can thrive, so that you can see a different side. But for me, coaching has always been about, how do you move this relationship forward? How is it that I'm stuck in my head? And
Mm-hmm.
what you talk about being in your head, but how is it that I can change my thoughts so
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah,
my
right.
feelings change and,
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah,
actions?
yeah. No, absolutely, Dr. Lodi, you're right. That I mean, counseling has a place. Therapy does have a place, especially when it's individual. You want to see, like you said, what baggage you may have been carrying, from your past. And I think seeing that healing will have a greater impact on your future relationships, on your marriages and stuff. But when it comes to family therapy, what I have seen is everybody kind of pointing to each other, if that makes sense, making the other person wrong to look that you are the good guy kind of thing. Yeah. So, and there is some failure rate when it comes to marriage therapy, right? But in my marriage coaching, it's been 100% success rate so far. Um, Although the number is lower, because I do it in my practice and surrounding areas. Does that make sense? But it has been 100% when you do work.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, I do think that, with coaching, and I work a lot on this with my intimacy coaching patients, is that so much of what we fear is really in our heads, right? And if we can go to the root cause of whatever it is that's causing the problem, For example, a lot of times, so there's a condition called vaginismus. I'm sure you probably know about it, of
Yes.
course,
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
So, and I've talked about it several times on this podcast, but vaginismus is when the muscles in surrounding the vagina, they contract so that it makes it very painful for somebody to have penetration, whether it's, a pelvic exam, putting a tampon in, or having intercourse. And so much of that, especially for women that have been struggling for so long and for years, a lot of that, it's a three-pronged approach. Typically what we suggest, one is to, visit with their gynecologist or a sex med doc that can help them take a look, make sure there's not any infections or, anything anatomical going on, but also that they, see a sex therapist or a coach. And the last thing is that they work with a pelvic floor therapist. Now, when they see a coach, one of the problems associated with vaginismus is not only is it the muscles, but it's those muscles tense up in anticipation of pain, right?
Mhm,
So they're
mhm,
already thinking that they're going to have pain. So they're already fearful of it. And
mhm,
so it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy that you're going
mhm,
to have pain. You're thinking that this is going to hurt. It's going to be painful.
mhm.
And then those muscles tighten up. And then, of course, you
Of
have
course,
pain
it's going to be painful.
and
Yeah.
it's going to be painful. So much of coaching when we deal with patients with vaginismus is really working with their thoughts, right? How are
Mhm,
those thoughts
mhm,
affecting them, and what feelings is that bringing out? And then what action is that causing? But so if we
mhm,
can change those thoughts, then
mhm,
perhaps we can change those feelings, and then perhaps we can help with those actions, which is, the muscles tightening up. So, I think that coaching definitely has a place, and especially when it comes to thoughts, like you're talking about, right? Always going
mhm.
to the negative, and
Right.
always trying to help with those thoughts that we have.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And while you were talking, I also has been thinking about that. Yeah, yes, so coaching, working with your thoughts and stuff, and the majority of our population, I think, in general, we are not taught to examine what are we thinking, how are we feeling, how can we change it, right? Nobody takes the time to teach us that. Because you are a coach, how to notice what you're noticing, how to, because you are not your thought, you're not your emotion. We think we are one with how we're feeling, what we're thinking, but when you separate yourself, you can see, you can change it, right? And so that's powerful. um I also was thinking about the other main issue that I commonly see in married couples, especially uh, in the people I coach, is that once the kids are here, they kind of take all of our energy, all of our attention, and we may not spend the type of quality time we used to spend with our spouse, right? They take our world, and the focus becomes the children, and then mom and dad may not spend as much time before. So I be sure that they have a scheduled date nights, just time to spend together, just the two of them, as much as possible. Because there's carriers, that will take us away, our kids, and kids this day, all the activities they have, and just the time. Social media, of course, is not helping. Everybody may be absorbed in their world, but you want to be intentional about the quality of time you spend. And so it's like investing in your relationship, right? You got to work on the relationship. It may not be automatic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really, really important. I think that, investing in yourself, investing in your relationship, and making sure that you're taking care of the important people in your life, right? And that definitely includes yourself. I think a lot of times we forget that one of the most important people in our lives should be ourselves, right? If we don't take care of ourselves, nobody else is going to take care of us. So we really need to prioritize taking care of ourselves, and then, being once we do that, then we're able to take care of others. And that's kind of like a no brainer. But I think sometimes, we forget that because we're just so busy. And especially as, moms and parents, whatever, I think that, we get so involved with our children that we don't even take a look at ourselves or our health or anything like that.
Exactly, absolutely, absolutely. Especially in moms, like you said, we are caretakers, and so we think it's selfish to take care of us, but actually it's not. If you are not well in body, mind, spirit, you won't be able to be fully present for your children, for your spouse, at your job, whatever you're doing. And so it's really a disservice not to take care of you, whatever it takes. This is what I teach most often. Whatever fills your cup, first fill your cup, right? You cannot pour out of empty cup, whether it's exercise, whether it's whatever it's needed, take care of you so you can take care of children, spouse, family, everybody else, from a place of abundance, right? Fullness, not from a place of scarcity.
Right, great. Well, thank you. I think those are, very important words. And do you have any pearls or anything you want to leave people with, something to have them think about as we start to finish up the podcast?
Yeah. So we have spoken about a lot of things, and I think main things are going to be communication, and seeing the other people's perspective. Stay curious. So remove judgments, right? So be curious instead of judging and deciding this is why he did that or she did that, right? Stay curious and remove any shame, blame, judgment in any of your relationship, any of your communications. Stay curious, spend quality time with your significant other, and just work on the relationship. It's not going to be perfect automatically, right? By default, it's not going to be. You just have to work on it too.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. How can people get in touch with you? They may be listening and thinking that they'd like to get in touch with you. So what would you recommend?
Yeah, so thank you. Yes, yes. So currently, you can find me on social medias, Facebook, Instagram, at Senait Adebo, my full name. And then my website that's active and live is my practice website, sugarlandpediatrics.com. Um, like I said,
Great.
people can send a message on our website, DM, or our office number will be on the website, sugarlandpediatrics, tx.com. Can call or message there also.
Excellent. Great. Well, thank you. And well, we are done here and it's been real and really intimate. And remember that this is not meant to be any type of medical advice. And if you're having any issues with your relationship or your marriage, please go and get some help. And until next time, this is the Muslim Sex Podcast. So thank you for listening to the podcast and make sure you leave us a review, share and like the podcast. And if you leave me a review, I'd love to shout you out on social media. So be sure that you share it with all your friends. And thanks for listening.